So, hello, welcome to the Cafe Hustle, and welcome to this, the first of our workshop sort of episodes where we're looking at digging deeper into certain elements of what we do in terms of running our businesses. So today we've got Scott McNamara. He's going to be running the workshop in terms of looking at margins and how we cost and price our products around the raw material cost. And we've got Jesse as well, who's joined us to as part of the discussion. So first of all, we'll just have a quick introduction. And Scott, over to you.
Thanks, Andy. My name's Scott McNamara. I'm the owner and co-founder of Gather Coffee Company in Tennessee. The reason why I thought this would be really useful is that I spent the bulk majority of my career in business consulting. And I found that I've stolen a lot of things from my days at Nike, Intel, Microsoft, IBM, and am now kind of morphing them into the coffee realm to help run my business. And so I thought this might be a cool way for me to be able to give back to the coffee community that's been so supportive to us and helpful to us in so many ways. So that's kind of my goal in today's session.
And Jesse?
My name is Jesse Lambert. My wife and I took over a coffee shop in Cape May, New Jersey back in 2015. So we're heading into, I got to do the math with the years. We're heading into our 8th year, technically. We opened up a second location in 2018, and both locations have been doing pretty well. We're happy with them. And we are in a seasonal beach town, so most of our business is from Memorial Day to Labor Day. The second location we opened is actually more of our year-round location. And we're looking forward to figuring out, ways to improve our profit margin and pricing and everything.
I think as we were chatting before we started the episode is, although people know how to do this, and we don't know how teaching people to suck eggs, but there's always different viewpoints and different methodologies, isn't there, for anything like this, anything in our businesses, what we do, that people can just pull little bits of information from other people's insight and apply it to their own business in a different way, maybe, and really get the benefit. So, Scott, over to you then. I don't know if you want to start running through your process and what you've got and your template in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for that segue, Andy. My goal in this is just to share what's working for us, right? It might not be the perfect way. It might not pass, Harvard Business School standards. I don't know. It's working for us. And again, if this can help some other businesses that maybe don't have this yet, or give them some more precision in their analysis, then I'm happy with that. So kind of my legal disclaimer: don't crash your business because you took my spreadsheet. And I do believe, Andy, that you're going to make this template available for folks online, for folks that listen to this, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Make this
Okay.
available.
Awesome. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to yell at me. Sometimes I tend to get a little bit long-winded with this. So what I've done here is, as you can see, we'll talk about this shaded section on the top. Okay, so these are our current prices. A couple of things I want to call out here. The first thing is, you'll notice at the bottom, I have the tab called March 2022. What I want to do is, every time I want to look at my pricing, I want to just duplicate the tab. So maybe the next time I do this is in May. I'm going to copy that tab, call it May. And then up top here, I'm going to enter my new prices. So for 12-ounce cold cups, you'll see it's $65.99 per 10,000. So if my price goes up to $75, I hit that there, and all my cell references for 12-ounce cold cups automatically update. Okay,
so that updates down in the main part of the spreadsheet, which is where all your breakdown figures
yes.
are. Yeah.
Yeah, so everything is referenced, and there's math here. So make sure that if you download this template, please don't just delete everything. You'll break the math, and then you'll be mad at me, and then it's not good for anybody. That's a nice way. So you really want to get down to your lowest common unit of measure. So for the most of what we're doing, it's ounces. Okay, so if I go over here to my mocha powder, you'll see here, it's $19.81 per bag, and there's my per ounce. So I took that price and then came up with how many ounces are in the bag, and that's what gives me the math. Okay, so again, if this price were to change, if it goes up to $25, it's going to change those prices throughout the spreadsheet for me. Okay, by raising that per ounce from 35 cents to 45 cents. Okay. So, then there's another thing that I want to talk about, and that's, that whole thing about artificial precision. Yes, this could be a little bit more precise, but to what end, right? So for our whip, I really didn't go out there and have my team put whip on a drink and weigh it out. And you know what I'm saying? Like, we kind of just took a rough guess. So some of this is a bit of a swag, okay? But it still gets us, on paper, in terms of hitting the target, for looking at our pricing. The reason we did this was because, as everybody knows, inflation and supply chain issues are raising and wreaking havoc with a lot of our businesses. And what I've noticed is a lot of areas are doing like across the menu blanket increases. And for us in our community, we don't live in a very wealthy, affluent area, and people love their coffee and they love coming to our shop. So we wanted to kind of be a little bit more surgical and identify the drinks that have had the most impact in cost. Our Ghirardelli white chocolate has gone up big time. So a lot of our smoothie mixes have gone up. So this way it allows us to use math to find out what drinks and what products really do deserve a price increase, which ones can remain flat before. And that's exactly what we did. So back to where I was. So again, up here, you want to only enter in your product costs in that product cell. So for the white chocolate that I was saying has gone up is $93.59. Again, I can just type a cost, $95.50, and it's going to change my per ounce price automatically. Okay. Now, if you have one thing to remember, if you're plugging your stuff into here, you might have different number of ounces. If you're not using that Ghirardelli white chocolate, I think it's a 25-pound box. If you're using a different product from a different vendor, double check and feel free to go in here and update how many ounces are in the container that you have. Okay, so there's a little bit of maintenance you might have to do based on your own particular situation. So if you have a 200-ounce box, you would just go in here and type 200, and it's going to update that pricing for you. Okay, so invest the time in getting this top shaded section correct. It's going to really pay you dividends in the end.
So what you're looking at doing there now is finding out your container cost, dividing it by your yield in terms of if you were to have no wastage or anything like that. So if you get, like, say there's 200 ounces, you've changed it to there. So that then updates throughout the rest of the spreadsheet.
Correct. Yep. So like I said, if you invest some time there, it'll save you time in the long run because you don't have to hand jam every entry kind of manual, right? Another thing you'll notice is that we have our each. So most of the time I got to the ounce, okay? But when it comes down to a tea bag, right, that doesn't really make sense. So you'll notice a little bit of variance in terms of some of these units of measure, right? They're not always going to be ounces. They're going to be, like in case of a tea bag, it's going to be per item or per each. So just pay attention.
That's saying, oh, sorry to interrupt you. So is that saying that you get 28 bags in each box?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yep.
Great.
All right.
Yep. Great question. So we pay $3.29 for a box, and we get 28 in a box.
Okay.
So great question. Change that quantity if you get 24, and that'll update for you. Yep. Okay. So now let's talk about the actual spreadsheet itself. We broke it out into these kind of categories so that if we wanted to, we could even go one level deeper, not just per beverage or per size, but almost a segment of what makes up that beverage. Okay, so if we see a huge spike in sip through lids or sleeves, we can actually see exactly where that price increase is hitting in terms of the makeup of that drink. So we have it broken down into really 5 categories. We've got the serving components, which is your straws, your lids, your cups, your sleeves, maybe a napkin, those types of things. And then we have our drink base. So this is going to be your milk. If you have an Americano, it's going to be your water. It's going to be your espresso or your drip coffee. What's really making up the bulk of that drink. And then we have a section for syrups and powders. So again, if you're doing a lot of Tiranis or Monin syrups or something, that's where they're going to go. I kept space for up to 4 different syrups because some people will do, half orange, half, vanilla or something like that. So there's room to actually put, if you have a more complicated drink, up to 4 syrups, and then we did 3 powders just in case folks are adding. Then I have a single category for miscellaneous. this is where I just put that whipped cream charge, right? We don't include it on all the drinks, just some. So that was the spot. You can always add to the miscellaneous category if you do sprinkles or you do other things and you really want to increase that precision for your drink. And then I just sum up these sections. So you'll see this is really just the total. So G11 you'll see is the total of this right here. And then I take my sum, which is this column Z, off of the totals so it just makes it simpler, right? At a glance, I can see it's 16 cents in serving cost for a 20-ounce cappuccino, right? Now that we're over on this side of the sheet, a couple of things I'll call out. One, I've falsified all the pricing in here just for confidentiality's sake. So please don't open a coffee shop and take these as menu prices. Another thing is, when we're talking about capacities in this little shaded section here, this is another area where I took a little bit of a swag, right? So if you have a 12-ounce drink, it's not always 12 ounces of milk, right? So we kind of came up with that base liquid, how many ounces. So for like a 12-ounce latte, it might be 2 ounces of espresso and 10 ounces of milk, right? With ice drinks, you might have more ice in the cup. You might be using less of that base liquid. So these are kind of the numbers that I use as a guideline for accurately counting the base of my drinks. And so that it wasn't like, oh, 12-ounce drink, you use 12 ounces of milk. Well, no, we really don't, right? And so those you can change to fit your own recipes and whatever. So now on the right,
just before you move on, so your serving column, just where is that come from? Is that your?
That is the sum. That is the sum of our serving components.
So okay, so I see, yeah. So
a 12-ounce hot cappuccino is 14 cents just in the serving components to build the drink.
Yeah, well.
So that's cup, lid, and sleeve.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh, am I doing the math wrong there? It looks like it should be 15 cents. Is it adding up right?
It's probably a rounding.
Because I saw 546, and I was like, oh, that's 15.
It'll be a rounding error, yeah.
Yeah, that is a rounding error. That's funny. That is funny. Because here it's 15, and it went up. Yeah, that is a good look. When you're down to the penny, maybe it's rounding. It's funny. I don't know why I did that, but that's interesting. Okay, so now let's go back over here. We've got our totals. Now we got in column AA, we're going to plug in what's our menu price for that item, right? So pretty straightforward. And then what is our profit? So this is really the crux of, and again, remember I falsified the pricing, so we don't really have a drink that's $2.46. But this will tell you what your profit is and therefore what our margin on that drink is. So I've applied some conditional formatting so that at a glance, red is good and blue is bad. So I can scroll down my products and say, whoa, these margins are really where I might need to make that targeted price change on my menu to bring them up. My average right now, based on this, and AC8 right here, is 74%. Okay, so the average of all my menu items gives me a 74% margin, which isn't bad. So I can kind of use that 74% number to guide me in what can I do on some of these dark blue drinks to get me closer to 70% or 70% plus. So that's when this column here for future price modeling comes in. So that's these columns here. So this is where I can go in. So let's really look. I'm just going to highlight these so that it's a little bit easier. We'll just make them bright yellow. So those are, let's say right now, I want to really focus on these drinks and find out what I can do. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in a new price. I'm going to say that, so we're selling it at $4.25. I'm going to say we're going to do $5.50. All right.
I knew it was going to be frozen drinks.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's the same problem we're having. Our frozen drinks, the profit margin is just not there.
It's for us in the frozen drinks, it's the vanilla base from the dairy that's really gone high, plus the plastic cups.
Yep.
So I'm just going to reference my price cell here, and then I'm going to just copy my profit, and it should just do the math for me. Negative. So we'll just say equals this minus this. So we're making $1.25. Now I'm going to grab this cell, copy and paste. Why is this? Isn't it funny how it always it always acts a fool. Oh, that's why. Bear with me. Sorry, my trash delivery is apparently right now. So we're going to take, what was that here? Profit divided by price, right? Okay, so we'll take profit divided by new price. Okay. Don't you love when you're doing a podcast and it's you just have a brain fart? Let me go up and find, actually, that's pretty funny. Okay. So what am I doing wrong here, guys? I need another copy. Profit divided by price.
So what I was going to say was I can.
Oh, I see what happened.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, my profit was wrong. It's still early over here. Why is it $1?
Yeah, I was going to talk to Andy about, normally when I would do stuff like this, I would do it all by hand.
Scott, you're using your, that's it, yeah.
I just found it. Sorry, everybody. Brain fart.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you'll be able to see that if we go to a $5.50, how's that for credibility? A $5.50 price, our cost has stayed the same. We're now making $3.11 versus $1.86. So our margin's gone up to 57%. So for us now, yeah, 57 is still kind of statistically low, right? But for me to get that closer to 70, let's just take a look. So the drink would have to be $7.50, and we're still not at 70%. So we, when we got into this, to what Jesse was saying earlier, we knew that our frozen drinks were going to have to go up. So the smoothies, our blended mochas, stuff like that have gone up. So what we did was we realized that a lot of our other higher margin drinks like Americanos and stuff, they were like a 95% margin on those. So across, right, they still kind of averaged out. So our menu, as I showed earlier, had an average of 74% based on this file here. So, we're okay with that. We knew that the higher margin items are going to cover some of the margin gaps for some of the lower margin products on the menu. But this is a nice way to know a couple of things. Number one, this is math, right? There's no arguing with facts. This is going to give you a great second opinion to where you should focus on your menu. Again, what worked for us was not a across the board price increase of like 20% or something like that. We wanted to be a little bit more surgical with it, and this really helped. Did you have a question you wanted to
target, doesn't it? It doesn't just necessarily, like you say, that blanket increase when there's stuff that, for example, your tea, it's a low cost or relatively low cost, and the margin is there. You don't necessarily need to cover that. But what this spreadsheet now does is it gives you a flag and says, these are the drinks to look at, or whether it'll work as well for food costs as well, if anyone wants to use it for food costs. But this gives you a pointer and says, these are the drinks that may be lagging behind in terms of profit margin. That's where you need to focus your efforts in terms of lining up your value proposition with the price.
Yep, absolutely. And, it also lets you know, like, are we able to absorb? So if some people might say, I don't want to raise my prices, can I deal with a 44% margin on a blended mocha, right? And you might be able to. You might say, hey, actually, on second thought, our menu average is 74%. I'm happy with that.
Just one thing I will point out is certainly what I certainly did is you have to use this in conjunction with your sales data as well, or your forecasted sales data. So if you were your blended mocha, if you were selling 95% of your sales were that, then there's an issue there in terms of your overall gross margin, isn't it? Because you need to make sure that your product mix alongside your profit margin works together to make sure that your overall actual profit margin on your profit and loss is where you need it to be.
Absolutely. And that's a good call. One thing I thought about doing was in this column, you could add a quantity. Oops, sorry. You could just say, on an average month, I sell, 750 of these blended mochas, you could take that profit and multiply it by that quantity and double check and make sure, are we selling $3,800 worth of blended mochas? And again, if I go back to here and make this, 675, what is that doing to this number, to my bottom line number? So you could extrapolate this across the quantities of those high, even if you took your top 5 drinks on the menu and really look like the 80-20 rule, right? If you took your top 5 drinks on that menu, you could then go forward and actually see monthly. If I make a 10-cent change on the item, what does that mean at the end of the month?
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty powerful. Well, another thing I want to talk about, since we're on the topic of adding columns.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So for that frozen blended mocha, what size was that? Was that a 16 ounce or?
Yes. So for our blendeds, we only offer 16 and 20s.
Okay, I see it now. So you do have the 2 columns there.
Yep. We don't offer 12 ounce on blendeds.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you do have 2. You have 2 rows there. Yep. All right, that makes sense. All right, sorry. Go ahead.
Nope, you're good. One of the topics that came up in that Facebook group where this all thing kind of started was, what about our overhead and labor? Do you include that in your margin? We personally don't. We manage that as a sunk cost. We manage that in a much different way, right? We look at our percentage of labor, our percentage of sales, to really make sure that our labor is in check. But what you could do if you want to is you could add a multiplier if you wanted to. So you could add over here like an overhead column, and you could add whatever's right for your business, 0.05 or 0.1 even, and you could just take your total cost and multiply it by that, and then you could come up with a total with overhead if you really wanted to. And you could just say, take that and then add it to your total. And now that'll give you whatever that factor is, whatever that variable number is that you decide on. That'll give you a total of your drink price plus whatever that overhead percentage is. And to Andy's point earlier, you'd probably want to look at your quantities of drinks to really be able to figure out that spread. If your team is making blendeds 80% of their time, you're going to want to weight that a little bit differently than an infused lemonade or something that maybe you don't sell a lot of. We just chose not to go that route because, like I said, we managed those as sunk costs in a different way.
Yeah, like for example, with us, we had certainly through the summer it was big on milkshakes, and they were ice cream milkshakes, and the cost was, like you say, your margin isn't as good on them, but we ended up having we had to really sort of increase our price to almost discourage people from buying them as well, because the time that went into them, the cost wasn't quite the same. It was we were hit from both ends basically.
Yep.
So, but this generally when we're looking at, or certainly when we were doing this, we weren't really, for us personally, we never included the labor cost because there's always efficiencies to be made. And as soon as you get someone who is able to pump out, say, 30 drinks an hour, and someone that maybe would only be doing 15, you can't always track everything that everything that really is happening.
See, for us, we have 2 people at the bar minimum. I'm not going to send somebody home because our volume of blended mochas has gone down by 6%. I mean, that's a sunk cost, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, again, to your point, Andy, like it's a flat line. We have that price. We know what it's going to be, but some people might manage their business a little bit differently and want to see at a per item level what that overhead factor is going to do to their price. So Jesse, how does this line up with how you've been doing it? Is it similar?
So what I was saying earlier is I always do this stuff by hand. I know that sounds crazy. I'm pretty good with computers. I just never. So this is Excel, right?
It is.
Because I have a MacBook. So would something like this transfer onto my Mac for the numbers?
I would probably try Google Sheets.
Okay.
As well as numbers. That's a good question.
Yeah. Because sometimes the math doesn't transfer over, or the
right.
the calculations that you have in there.
Yeah, so what I'll do, Andy, I'll also look at saving this as more of a generic file as well.
Yeah.
So there'll be an Excel version and then maybe like a CSV or something that I can see and make sure the math didn't break. So that if folks have, I'm on a Mac right now, if folks have other systems, we can make sure it's more generic.
Yeah, I think Jesse, we spoke about this through email earlier in the week, and I have very rarely have I come up with issues, certainly moving stuff between Excel and numbers when I've used it. So it should generally it should come across because but like I say, if Scott saves it in a more generic format, then it'll be a lot easier more accessible for people.
Yeah. But if for some reason this doesn't work on numbers or Google Sheets, I'd be more than happy to download Excel for my Mac because this is pretty legit.
Good.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing this, Scott. This is at first when you opened this up, I was overwhelmed, but now I understand what everything is.
It can look pretty overwhelming. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think the important thing to note for people
Andy.
is that the work goes into the top line, the top 5 or 7 rows of this spreadsheet, because that's your basis. If that's off, the rest of the sheet is inaccurate. You really need to, like we used to, and I know Scott, you were saying you don't necessarily weigh down to your yields, but I like to because that's my way of thinking. I love my statistics, stuff like that, and I like it to be accurate. But then at the same time, are our staff always accurate? So it's never always as easy as that. But yeah, for me, that's the work part of it. And then obviously your forecasting and bits and pieces on the right-hand side is really handy in terms of where you need to be or looking at potentially then cost increases. Can you model cost increase as well?
No, absolutely. So that's basically why I was saying you copy the tab, right? So you could go over here. If I have a cost increase, I can just make a copy of it. And I'm going to, create a copy and I'm going to call it, May. Let's just say it's May. And then I can go up here and just start adding my cost increases, so I can say that my mocha syrup is now $12, my white chocolate's 110, and just go down and change these. And it's going to change all my pricing.
Yeah. Everything
so now I can
through.
Yep, I can look at where I was in March per drink. I can look at where I am in May per drink and see again where the changes are hitting me.
Yeah. Jesse, have you got any questions for Scott on how he's necessarily calculated it or anything like that? We've got about 5 minutes left. So.
No, he explained everything very well. And I think for me, it's just going to be a learning curve because I've used Excel before and I've used numbers before. So if there's something that I don't know, I'll just Google like, oh, hey, how do I figure out the sum of this? I'll just Google it to figure it out. But being able to see how he came up with all this and how it works was extremely helpful for sure.
Oh, good.
Yeah, thank you.
Was a help. No, you're very welcome.
Certainly from my point of view, having something like this, and Scott, this is a massive shout out to you for producing this, but then sharing this with the industry, essentially, or our community at least, and we'll get it on the Facebook groups as well. This for people to be able to produce with their own figures and then to have this as a tool to use will make a big difference to a lot of people, I think, who may not have had something like this before. So real massive shout out and a thank you to you for being up for sharing this. So thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. And I don't want to sound altruistic or anything, but it's been a tough few years for our industry. And, if there's any way that I can help relieve pressures for other owners that are feeling pinched or unsure of their pricing or whatever, I'm 100% down. So again, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying if there's a way that, the coffee industry has been amazing to us. I want to be able to pay that forward. So I hope that this will really help some businesses.
No,
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. It's like you say, the more people that we can get together to just drag everyone in the same direction. It's been a really tough 2 years without looking at what's going to happen over the next few months, which no doubt it is going to pinch tight. And this sort of tool is going to be really valuable to businesses if we can get this to as many people as possible and get them using it. It will really help them to identify where they may or may not have the gaps, or like
Mhm.
in your case, the products that could increase a little bit more and help out generally across the business. So, listen, guys, thank you very much for coming on and we're getting this sort of workshop episode together, and your patience with the tech side, because obviously we're being tested by that as well. So, yeah, like I say, in terms of Scott's spreadsheet, we will share that in the show notes, so there'll be a link in the bottom there. We'll also be producing this as a video episode as well, so you'll be able to see all the things Scott is talking about if you are listening to this as a podcast. So once our website is up and running, it'll be posted on there and on YouTube as well. So listen, guys, thank you very much. And anything to add before we go?
Nope.
No, I'm good on my end. Yeah, thanks for doing this, guys. I look forward to watching the episode.
No, thank you
Nice
very
meeting you
much.
guys.